So hello, everybody. It's 11:05 Eastern Time, and I think that's high enough time for us to get started. Wanted to welcome you all to a workshop that we're giving for PlatformCon 2024. We're hoping to show you guys a really nice way to create ephemeral Kubernetes environments today. I have been in the Kubernetes space for a really long time. My team is in the classroom with us today, or at least some of the members of our team are in here today. If anybody wants to follow along with our playground workshop today, we are going to go nice and slow. I'll have my screen shared, executing the same commands that you can be running from your local host. And if anybody has any trouble along the way, there's a Slack workspace in the platform engineering Slack. Let me bring that on screen real quick. So over here, if we go to platform engineering, oh, I'm not in the platform. I'm on the wrong laptop for that. Never mind, I'm not going to show you that. But anyway, in the platform engineering channel, there's a link for it right here. I can probably get to it from my browser.
Yeah, I can share a link in the chat and around real quick.
Thanks, pal. All right, now I have a platform engineering in here. And why is it not letting me click platform engineering? Maybe I need to reload. This is not where the demo is supposed to go off the rails.
Signing into Slack.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that's not showing well on this laptop for me, so I'm just going to trash that. But we have a channel called Workshop OSS Playground in the Platform Engineering Slack workspace. And throughout the course of today only, you'll be able to find our team in there. If anybody has any trouble replicating the workshop environment, just drop a comment in that Workshop OSS Playground channel, and someone from my team will hop in, try to help you along. And however you're able to do so, just try your best to follow along with what I'm doing on screen for when it's time for you to catch up and continue along. If anybody's watching this recording retroactively, we have a Slack workspace as well at Kubefirst. It's available at kubefirst.io/Slack. And you guys can join our workspace. We have a channel called Helping Hands, where we help people with anything cloud native. And we have a really good group of engineers in our workspace where everybody's trying to centralize on using the same free open source tools and using them the same way. So if that's ever valuable to you, we hope you'll join our community. The workshop classroom, I have a bookmark to it in that Slack workspace, and that's also available at this page that I emailed to all of our participants. And there are a handful of tools that everybody's going to need in order to conduct this workshop. Most of them are tools that you probably already have if you're familiar with Kubernetes, kubectl, kubecontext, and really it's kubeNS that we want to get out of that package. K3D is a Docker-based wrapper of the K3S distribution. So it's just a really lightweight Kubernetes cluster that you can run on your local host. We use MK-cert as a technology so that we can have HTTPS from your localhost client to the services that are ingressed on your localhost. In order to have that traffic be HTTPS, we need to install some self-signed certs, and those will be browser trusted if you install MK-cert. We have an optional closed source component on the local stack. It's called ngrok. Ngrok is a lightweight agent that runs on your laptop that opens a reverse tunnel for you to be able to allow access from GitHub into your Kubernetes cluster. We're going to go through, as part of this workshop, we're not only going to exercise some Terraform, but we're going to automate that Terraform in Atlantis. And in order for that to work correctly, basically the workflow is that anytime you submit a pull request that changes some Terraform, some jobs are going to kick off. And that requires a webhook in your GitOps repo that's going to call Atlantis. And that needs ngrok in order to go from that public internet into your local cluster. So that's not required, and that is closed source. So if there's anything about that that's a turnoff to you, you can skip over that step and just watch my screen when we get to that point. But it's also a very popular, very safe closed source product. So no reason to have any reservations about that. We're going to be using Docker Desktop on this demo. We understand that Kubefirst works pretty well with a lot of other container runtimes, but we do recommend Docker Desktop for most of our users. That's the happy path that's been beaten up pretty well. And you will need a GitHub account in order to conduct this workshop as well. Now, it's convenient if that's your GitHub account, but it doesn't have to be your GitHub account. We are going to need to ask for a lot of permissions. The account that you're using for a Kubefirst platform is an administrative robot account. It's basically like the brains of the system. So all the automated CI that happens, all of the automated IAC that happens, all of the automation period is conducted by this bot user named KBot. And that KBot user needs a GitHub account associated with it and very permissive access to that account. So today, when we create a K3D cluster, you have to use some GitHub account and authorize access. If you don't want Kubefirst to have access to your company orgs or to your company anything, go ahead and create a free GitHub account. It can be any old account, any old username, any old password will do, and use that for your demo today. You can also completely trust us. We have been at this game for well over 5 years. We know GitHub access very, very well and intricately. We have very good docs in our Kubefirst docs about the access that we're requesting and why we need that access and how we've guarded against whatever your concerns are. So you can just kind of drop your shoulders and use your GitHub account if you trust my honest smile. I think it's a pretty honest smile. And then lastly, you are going to need the Kubefirst CLI. The Kubefirst CLI is a binary. We keep it available on GitHub. It's also available through Brew, which is the easiest way to install most of these tools. And if everybody that has a Kubefirst can check to make sure that you have version 2.4.10, which was literally released yesterday, then that will ensure that we all have a singular experience and probably make the workshop go that much smoother. So thank you all for updating that. If you're behind, it's very easy to upgrade by typing brew update and then brew upgrade kubefirst/tools/kubefirst. And if anyone has trouble with that, our team's there to help. Just drop a comment in the platform engineering channel. And before I get into the demo, does anyone have any questions before we get going? All right, we are smooth as silk. Let's keep rolling. So the ngrok account and the ngrok closed source component that I was referring to before does require you to create an account at ngrok. And it's a really easy account setup. Let me go ahead and go to, once you create an account, in the left gutter, the very bottom, the very top here has a getting started, and there's a your auth token section. If you guys can just copy that value by clicking this button, and then let's go to a new terminal session, and let me
John, do you mind bumping that font before you get going?
Yeah, thank you, Jared. Okay, so we're going to export ngrok token equals whatever value you had in there. And by exporting that environment variable, that's going to guide the Kubefirst CLI to understand that you want Atlantis, that you want ngrok installed, that you want all of that, those mechanics to be included. And then that's all you have to do is export that single environment variable. And then if you type kubefirst k3b create, this is where all of the magic happens. Now, the first thing that it's going to do is challenge you for a code. And if you go back to your terminal, and I'm going to have to do this pretty quickly, I'm going to paste that code in and then scroll all the way to the bottom. Now, if you have two-factor authentication turned on, that will challenge your phone, ask you for a code, and you only have about 100 seconds to execute this. If anybody has any trouble getting that completed within that 100 seconds, you can simply try again, and it will re-challenge you with a new code that you can enter into that field. Once you enter that and you get this congratulations, you're all set screen, if you go back to your terminal, you'll see that your terminal has continued. Basically what we did right there was created an ephemeral GitHub token that will grant your Kubefirst instance that you're creating here access to your GitHub, whatever GitHub account you were signed in your browser. It's going to grant that account access for 8 hours. Now, if you need a longer token, like you want to have a platform for a few days, for a few months, whatever, you can proactively create a GitHub token and export that the same way that we just exported that ngrok auth token. This ephemeral one is just the frictionless way to do it, but it's only good for the next 8 hours. So that's just something to understand about the ephemeral token there. And then while this is executing, this command takes about 12 minutes or so to execute. You can open a second terminal, and let me increase my font size here, and type kubefirst logs. Oops, we have to type it correctly though. Kubefirst logs. And kubefirst logs is going to show you everything that's going on in a more detailed view. So, you know, as we go through the execution, we have to create a K3D cluster. We have to do a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll execute some Terraform. The Terraform is going to generate plans and then apply the plans. All of those details are in these logs, so it's helpful if you're interested to see the mechanics of how a Kubefirst platform gets created. These logs are super valuable to you, especially if you run into an error. The logs generally will have some good, valuable information for you about what went wrong and why. Usually it gives you some good guidance on how to get back on the rails as well. We try to keep our commands very ephemeral, idempotent, so you can re-execute a Kubefirst K3D create if it fails, and it should try to pick up where it left off. And while this is executing for the next 10 minutes or so, I thought it might be a good idea to describe the platform that we're creating here. So this is what we're doing. This is you. You have installed the Kubefirst CLI onto your laptop, and then you have typed a Kubefirst K3D create command. Now, what the Kubefirst K3D create command is doing is it's creating two repositories in whatever organization it is that you granted Kubefirst access to. So in my case, I had been signed in under this user named Kubefirst DemoBot. And now in my repositories, I have, hit refresh. I have two repositories, Metaphor and GitOps. Those were created by the Kubefirst K3D create command. The GitOps repository is where it's where all of the brains of the platform exist. So we're talking about the Terraform IAC that creates the environment, the Terraform configuration as code that configures Vault and that configures your GitHub repositories. All of that plus all of the Argo CD configurations are all going to be created in this GitOps repository that we put in your GitHub org. Now, we create this GitOps repository from an upstream that we have at GitHub Kubefirst called the GitOps template. And the GitOps template repository, just to pull that on screen real quick. This template has a Kubefirst platform for a whole bunch of different cloud and Git provider combinations. So the workshop that we're giving you guys today is just for a completely free, completely local K3D platform, which is very valuable to a lot of people. But maybe you want to have a very similar platform in AWS and Civo and Vultr and DigitalOcean and GCP. And we have different variations of the Kubefirst platform for all of these different upstreams. And for each of these, we'll have a templates directory that represent how to create management clusters, workload clusters, or workload virtual clusters for all of our cloud accounts. The local K3D environment, we don't have cluster management. Excuse me, but we'll show you a little bit about how that works in your cloud environment at the end of this workshop. So I think that's all I wanted to say about that. So once we create this Git repository, and let me check in on my terminal, make sure we're still on the rails, and we are. And again, if anybody is having trouble executing that Kubefirst K3D create command, just drop a comment in the platform engineering channel from this document. So once we have a GitOps repository, we have some Terraform. And that Terraform can be used to create a K3D cluster and to configure Vault and to create users and do all kinds of cool stuff. It can also be used to drive the configurations of how Argo CD is going to GitOps apply applications to your K3D cluster. Now, what applications are we talking about? Basically, it's all of these. These applications, this is the K3D variation of the Kubefirst platform. We have other variations of the platform, like I was just alluding to, and they're much more comprehensive. They have management clusters and workload clusters and virtual clusters and all kinds of really enterprise-ready stuff. The K3D cluster implementation is a little bit stripped down, and there's a couple details that are different. One detail is that we use traffic instead of Ingress Nginx. We use Ingress Nginx in all of our cloud stacks, but we use traffic locally because that's the K3D default, and it was pretty lightweight. And just to, the other detail is MK-cert. So in all of our cloud platforms, we will use Cert Manager and Let's Encrypt as the mechanism to create SSL certs for all your Ingress applications. But on your local K3D version of the platform, we use MK-cert to create self-signed certs that are still browser trusted. So those are the two deviations on the local version of the Kubefirst platform. Any Kubefirst platform, regardless of the cloud that you install to or the Git provider that you use, is going to have these 5 pillars on it. It's going to have a control plane. It's going to have a user and secret ecosystem. It's going to have something to manage certs and ingress and hosts. It's going to have Kubefirst itself, which is just a user interface that sits on top of the Kubefirst open source platform. And then it also has a CI ecosystem that varies depending on your Git provider. So if you're a GitLab shop, we're going to install GitLab runners to your environment. If you're a GitHub shop, we're going to install the GitHub Action Runner controller to your management cluster. And then I guess from the standpoint of what to do after you have a platform created, we also have this implementation called the GitOps catalog that has a whole bunch of other really great, really valuable open source tools that can be added to your platform. They're just too opinionated to be a part of the core platform. So when you do a Kubefirst K3D create, think of it as creating that core Kubernetes ecosystem that you can always depend on. It's always going to have Vault. It's always going to have Argo CD. It's always going to have a way to run infrastructure as code. It's always going to have a place to store your secrets. It's always going to have a way to execute your CI. But there might be other valuable stuff that you want in that cluster after the fact. And you can choose from the stuff that we already have, and you can contribute to more stuff that you might want in your cluster. This is an open source upstream repository as well called the GitOps catalog. And everybody is welcome to add applications, including your own proprietary applications, to the GitOps catalog, and it will be immediately available to all Kubefirst users, and everybody that provisions clusters will be able to install your app. So it's a pretty neat tool. And let's check back in on our terminal, see how we're doing. We're at the 12-minute mark, so we're getting pretty close. And looking at the logs here, just to Kubefirst. Oh, there we go. So when you type Kubefirst logs, basically the output that you get is everything that's happened from the execution, and then it sits and follows and continues providing the logs. So if you ever have trouble or it feels like it's not giving you feedback and you give that again, it's going to give you the whole show of everything that's happened before and bring you right up to the point that you're at. So right now you can see that we have applied, let's see, this is the Vault execution that we're at right now. And now we're waiting on the Argo deployment. After the Argo deployment, it's going to have to install Kubefirst, which is a user interface that sits on top of the Kubefirst platform. As soon as Kubefirst is deployed, it's going to automatically launch our browser here in a couple seconds. And then we get started on our exploration of this open source platform. So hoping everybody feels like that was a pretty frictionless experience. I'm not sure what's going on in the channel. Jared, do we have anybody struggling, or are we pretty smooth so far in terms of people needing help?
We are in good shape. Thanks, Hyro. Got one person going, and that's so far, I think we're in good shape.
Fantastic.
We'll keep working with Jacob.
With no strings attached, I didn't click any buttons or anything. It just launches your browser window to a special URL here that we should probably talk about. The URL that it's going to launch when it's done is https://kubefirst.kubefirst.dev. Now, kubefirst.dev is a hosted zone that we host that will always resolve on everybody's workspace. It'll always resolve to the loopback at 127.0.0.1. And as a result, when you're running a local Kubernetes cluster, to provide that rich ingress experience, we can ins ingresses and have it be at like a nice friendly domain like kubefirst.dev, even though this isn't in the cloud or using load balancers or anything like that. And that will be the case for all of the applications that are ingressed on the Kubefirst platform. You can just run a simple command and we'll create the self-signed certs in your namespace and have it automatically bound to your ingress so that you can sort of have that nice, same rich experience, even though you're on a local Kubernetes cluster. A lot of people instead just like do port forwards, but it doesn't really show quite as well. So if that's a neat trick to you, that's something cool to know about. And I guess we should probably start with an exploration of the GitOps repository that we created for you. So anybody that has made it, and can I get a quick thumbs up from everybody that's in here if you've gotten to the point, or a hand raised? We are recording as well, indeed. All right, it looks like we got a handful of thumbs up, and anybody else that's struggling, just another call out that we have a channel called workshop-OSS-playground in the platform engineering Slack workspace. And if you have any trouble, just ask a question there, and we have some teammates in here that'll jump right on and try to help you. So everybody that has made it to this point, if you go to your GitHub account, you should go to your repositories, and you'll find two new repositories that didn't exist before you ran that command. One of them is the metaphor repo. One of them is this GitOps repo. And we're going to explore this GitOps repository together. So the first thing that we want to look at is the Terraform. The Terraform folders include the stuff that we used to create the platform from an IAC standpoint. So in all of our cloud instances of Kubefirst, there will be 4 of these entry points. In the local version, there's 3 because we don't have to create a cloud as that 4th one. But all of your GitHub details will be in here, like the repositories that we're creating are created using infrastructure as code. The teams, now on the local version, you can't have teams as part of a personal account, but if you had a GitHub org instead, this would implement teams with your org. It would automatically create administrators and developers groups, and you'd be able to manage all of that using infrastructure as code that's already set up for you. The users section creates the default KBot user. This is the administrative user that you granted access to upfront. And then we have some commented out sections for how to add additional users to this platform. So if you had a bunch of friends that you wanted to grant access to your Git organization, or perhaps you were doing this in a cloud environment and really proving out this platform for your company, you'd be able to just uncomment these to onboard your team and then copy and paste them a bunch of times for each one of your team members. Our cloud implementation has single sign-on using Vault, and we're going to look at that in just a moment. Vault gets created and configured using Terraform infrastructure as code as well. So we'll create some OIDC clients. We'll create some users. We definitely have some secrets. Every single secret that's on the Kubefirst platform has Vault as its source of truth. So that's just something to know about the opinions of the Kubefirst playground that we're messing with. And that's pretty much all we have to talk about with Terraform there. There is one file here that's valuable to understand in terms of Terraform, which is Atlantis.yaml. Atlantis.yaml defines what directories are automated by Atlantis. So you can see here that we have Terraform Vault, Terraform Users, Terraform GitHub. Those are the 3 directories that are automated. If you wanted to add a 4th because you already have some infrastructure as code, you could just copy that directory into this Terraform directory, add a section right here in the Atlantis YAML, and now you have Atlantis automated Terraform. Congratulations, it was pretty easy. The next thing that we're going to look at is the registry. Now, if you were to look at the GitOps repo and cut it into 2 halves, the 2 halves is infrastructure as code, which is down in the Terraform section, or GitOps, which is up in the registry. So looking at the registry itself, we have in its root, there's a subfolder called Kubefirst, and that's the name of the cluster that we created. And that's the convention that we use, is that there's going to be a registry folder in your GitOps repo. There's going to be a subfolder that represents your cluster. And every single thing that ever gets installed to that cluster has a file right here. Now, in Argo CD is one of the most powerful, impactful, incredible technologies I've ever seen in my entire career. And I've seen a lot of tech. It's just a really, really great engine. They have a lot of different methodologies, patterns, practices. You can go to the CNCF Slack workspace and find a series of probably 12 or so Argo channels. They have a vibrant user community. You can literally ask anything that you want. There's going to be just an entire industry of people that will weigh in on how stuff works. It's a fantastic space. We love Argo. Now, Argo is not the only GitOps technology in the world. There's also a very good GitOps engine called Flux CD. We at Kubefirst don't support Flux CD, but Flux CD is another really great GitOps style to manage your Kubernetes resources as code. But the story that we're going to show you today for this OSS playground is Argo CD. And our pattern for Argo CD is an app of apps pattern. For those of you who are already familiar, or those who aren't, Argo CD lets you install stuff a whole bunch of different ways. You can install a Helm chart. You can install just Kubernetes manifest files. You can install using a Helm file. You can install using Customize. You can install just an application that is an app of apps. And this concept allows you to organize your Kubernetes resources however it makes sense for your developers or your engineers. So a lot of companies will organize their app of apps so that the topmost app is something like development or staging or production. And it's not really an app itself, it's just an Argo CD construct that allows you to organize the of apps. So you can say, I have an app called development. Well, what's in development? Well, development has 2 apps. One of them's called Acme, one of them's called something else. And then you can go to the Acme app and then say, well, what is the Acme app? And the Acme app could be 5 different microservices that are all also individual apps. And you can kind of follow that app of apps through your GitOps directory structure as deep as you want to go. For a simple explanation of how that looks in real life, it's this directory here. So the registry Kubefirst directory has a whole bunch of YAML files, and all of these are top-level apps. So if we look at, for example, Atlantis, Atlantis says, I am of kind application. This is an Argo Proj CRD. And basically all we're saying is, in order to install this thing, just go to a Git repository and look at this path here. Well, this Git repository is the same Git repository that we're in right now. So let's go to this path and see what that looks like. It's literally registry Kubefirst, and instead of Atlantis, it's components Atlantis. So let's drop that right there. And we can see that there's 5 pieces in here that get installed when we install Atlantis. Now let's take a look at this. This is just how it's represented in Git, but it's important to understand the other side of this coin in Argo CD. So if you go back to the kubefirst.kubefirst.dev to your applications page here, you'll find an Argo CD link that'll take you to argocd.kubefirst.dev. Now, you're going to need to log in, and in all our cloud accounts, you can just use single sign-on up here. Don't click this button, though. That doesn't work on the K3D instance. I apologize for that being viewed. We need an admin username and password. Now, in order to get that admin username and password, we're going to go back to our terminal, and I'm going to get rid of these logs because we don't need to look at the logs anymore. And if you're looking at this purple screen, this is just kind of giving you some initial URLs so that you can get to the browser that we were just looking at. If you hit Control C, it'll exit out of that command, and you can type kubefirst K3D root-credentials. When you type that command, that's going to give you some key credentials to get into all of the different layers of the platform. So this Argo CD admin password right here, if you just copy that, we can go back and type admin as the username and paste that value as the password. And when we do that, sorry, I keep losing my mouse. I'm not sure why that's happening. So when we do that, that brings you into Argo CD. And up here at the top, if you type the word registry, that'll bring you to our registry. And if we click that tile, we can scroll and see quite a number of applications that should start to look a little bit familiar because they're identical to the applications that are in your registry directory here. So actions run a controller, Argo Workflows, Argo CD, action run a controller, Argo components for Argo Workflows, Argo CD. This is the Argo CD manifestation of this Git directory, and they are truly one and the same. So when you make changes to add additional applications to this directory, more applications are going to show up in Argo CD, and if those applications instruct Argo CD to install Helm charts or add, Kubernetes manifest files or whatever it is that they're supposed to do, they will do it. So when we look at that components Atlantis directory as an example, we can go to Atlantis components, and we can see that those same components are in here. So there's an application an external secret, ingress route. Here's our application. Here's our external secret. There's an ingress route down here. So these are truly bound to each other, which is how GitOps works. So any adjustments that you make on the main branch here makes changes in your Kubernetes cluster. So that's super impactful. To anybody unfamiliar with GitOps, you can just kind of close your eyes and imagine the disaster recovery capabilities, the simplicity of the security. You basically just have to protect that main branch. Nobody needs access to your cluster any longer. They can have access to Argo CD and the Git repository instead. So a lot of cool stuff there. We can talk about that a whole bunch at the end if anybody has curiosities. And then let's see. Jared, how are we doing on the demo flow? Where am I supposed to go next? I feel like we have
You're doing great. The adding application through the GitOps catalog is the next part up.
All right, yeah, that's a great call. So we have this GitOps catalog. If you go from applications over here to the GitOps catalog, these are all the applications that we or other users have contributed to our upstream GitOps catalog repository. And it lets you add additional applications to the platform after you're done. So to show how that works, I'm going to pick Argo Events right here and just click the install button. Now, most marketplace experiences like this, if you were to click install on an app, you would probably expect that that's going to like Helm install something directly to your cluster or kubectl apply it directly to your cluster. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, with Kubefirst, when you use the GitOps catalog, we will register the correct GitOps with your Git repository so that Argo CD can install that application to your cluster. So to look at that, if I go back to install applications and go back to my GitOps repository, we should see that, yeah, just a second ago, we have a new commit in our GitOps repository saying adding Argo events to the cluster Kubefirst. And if I scroll down, this is truly all it takes to get an application added to the Kubefirst platform is you just have to drop an app in the registry, and then you have to define what that app is with a Helm chart. So this is the Argo Helm chart installing Argo events at version 2.3.3. We're giving it a release name. If you had some values that you wanted to apply, you could set those values right there for configuring your installation. And that's all that it takes to get stuff in your cluster. I didn't type anything. I didn't type any kubectl apply or Helm install or anything like that. And right now, if we go to my cluster, in fact, let me bring it up before I go to kubectl. If I go back to the registry in Argo CD, this registry will now have Argo events right here, Kubefirst Argo events components. If I drop in there, this is our brand new Argo events. It's 2 minutes old, and now we have Argo events as part of this platform. So it's really easy to add composable pieces to get onto this platform. And our hope is that, there's obviously millions of cloud native users in the world. They're all working on different products. A lot of people have to demo products all the time. A lot of times being able to create a reproducible environment is a lot of tough work. With Kubefirst K3D, especially if you have an app that you demo that's on the GitOps catalog, it's really easy to have a repeatable local environment and then add that app that you're always demoing onto that environment. In fact, there's even switches where you can add it automatically so that it's not a secondary step. So you can create that nice frictionless experience. But that's basically how GitOps works on the Kubefirst platform. Before I continue along, I'm just going to pause for a quick sec to see if anybody from the workshop has any questions or feels like they're stuck or has any points of confusion or anything like that. All right, I
Nope,
think we're
we're
doing
doing
pretty
good. We
good.
got a couple folks in the Slack space that we're helping through, but we're in good shape mostly.
Fantastic. Um, so,
Thanks.
Jared, keep me honest. Where are we going next? We've added an app to
Yeah.
the platform.
That would be to HashiCorp Vault and how we do secrets access for users, apps, and reloading apps with
Oh, neat.
when
Very
you
cool.
need to update secrets.
Yeah. So let's drop right into HashiCorp Vault. If you go to Kubefirst dev, sorry, I shouldn't be so lax. Kubefirst.dev. You'll be presented with the tile to get you to Vault. Vault is available at vault.kubefirst.dev. And again, you're going to need to sign in. In our cloud instances, this is, again, all single sign-on, but you're going to need a username and password for this. It's important to drop down when you log into Vault. You're going to have to pick a token or a username. If you pick token, then you need the Vault root token password here. If you choose username right here, then we have a single admin user that we create named KBot that you can log in as that administrative user and sort of see what the user experience is as an admin. Let me paste that there. And if you click secret once you've logged in, you'll be presented with a whole bunch of secret nodes, each of which probably looks pretty familiar from the last list of all the apps that we were showing you in the registry. Basically, any app that we have on the platform that needs a secret is going to have a secret in Vault. Now, we will never have applications reach directly into Vault. We always use external secrets operator as a tool to pull secrets out of Vault and make them Kubernetes native secrets. And that's just a platform design decision that we have. We think that it's really important to have an abstraction layer in between your actual secrets engine and the developers that need those secrets, so that you as a platform engineer are able to sort of change your mind about your secrets technology without ruining the entire company. So each one of these secrets will have a whole bunch of sensitive values, especially Atlantis. Atlantis is how we run all of our infrastructure as code. So it needs a lot of secrets. So a lot of the values that are sensitive to us are available in that Atlantis secret and available to Atlantis for Terraform execution purposes. The rest of them are all a lot smaller. Like for Chart Museum, you need a way to log into Chart Museum. It's basically just S3 access. For MinIO, same story. But we also have a development, staging, and production instance. And these are a little bit different. This sort of shows a pattern where you could have a secret of secrets. So we have a development secret, and then we're able to put multiple secrets in that directory in Vault. So here we have one explicitly for this application called Metaphor that we haven't really talked about yet. If we go back just real quick to this screen, I mentioned that we create a couple of repositories when you do that K3D create. One of them was this Metaphor repository. Metaphor is a sample React app that basically just serves as a really good demonstration ground for how cloud native works with all of these tools that are on the platform. So if you want to know how Ingress works, or how to have different secrets in different environments, or how to do DNS for different host names for different environments, or different configs for your database IP address for different environments, how certs work, how GitOps delivery works when you deliver an app to dev stage prod. All of those types of details are demonstrated by Metaphor. And we'll get into that just a little bit in the workshop. but we have some fake secrets in here that can show on screen pretty easily. And these are just sample secrets that Metaphor is going to ingest and present directly on screen so that like we can make changes to secrets and you can see how those changes are reflected in the actual applications. And you can see what Metaphor looks like if you go back to Kubefirst and click the Metaphor development instance here. This is Metaphor in its most complex form. It's a pretty simple application. It basically just shows you a couple secrets that it's configured with, a couple configs that it's configured with, what Helm chart delivered it, and what Docker tag is running as a container. And that's all she wrote. That's all Metaphor does. But we use it internally as a application that uses our CI from the platform so that when we start making CI changes, we have an app that we can experiment with to know that that new version of our delivery patterns work without actually disrupting our developers and their ability to deliver their applications to development staging production. So we use Metaphor as kind of a vetting ground for best practices and CI operations like that. And it's also good for demonstrating how the platform works. So let's see, we talked about secrets. I didn't talk about users too much, but it is important to call out that if you go to access, there's a user pass section right here. And every user that's on the platform will have a user pass entry. And if you click that user, you can do some simple things like edit that user's password as an administrator. And you can associate that user with groups. We would recommend really that you click ops that stuff. We have it all as infrastructure as code in your GitOps repository. So just make changes to your GitOps Terraform instead if you want to make changes or add users or add groups or whatever. But all this stuff is right here, and you can reset people's passwords and do whatever you need to do. It's also important to call out, let me hit OK there, that in access, policies, there are some ACL policies. Now, the ACL policies are the rules in Vault about what user groups have access to what stuff. And we use this to define what users have access to which secrets. And you can also use it if you extend the platform into your cloud. You can use it to define what user groups are allowed, like cloud access to your AWS cloud, as an example. All those integrations can be defined right in your ACL policies and extended through HashiCorp Vault. We have some YouTube videos on how that stuff works. It's pretty neat. So I think that's all I want to talk about with Vault. Let me talk about external secrets operator for a quick second, though. I mentioned
do you want to bundle reloader into that?
Yeah, sure will. Thank you. So I mentioned that we don't have applications reaching directly into Vault, and that we leverage external secrets operator as a tool to pull secrets out of Vault. Let's take a look at what that looks like real quick. So I'm going to go to that very impactful Atlantis secret and make a change. I'm going to create a new version by clicking this button up here. And I'm going to add a new anything and give it a value of foo. And you can see what that value is by clicking the eyeball if you like to. I'm going to hit add. And creating that secret is automatically going to pull in Atlantis components. We have an external secret here, and you can see this thing is going to be pulsing every 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds, it reaches into HashiCorp Vault, looks up the secret at that spot, and will update this Atlantis secret anytime a change happens. And if I look at this Atlantis secret right now, what's the name of the secret that I created? Was it anything? is anything. I feel like I should see that already.
Did you ever hit save on the Vault page?
Well, thank you, buddy. So when I hit save on that page, it's going to check back in. And we should see, yeah, we now have an anything right here. So that's how you get secrets out of Vault and get it in Kubernetes. Once it's in Kubernetes, there are very natural ways to get config maps or secrets into your application pods using environment variable binding. Just the simple Kubernetes deployment docs will tell you how to do that. That's pretty straightforward. So that's how we get stuff in our apps. And then up here, you can see that Atlantis is currently spinning. Atlantis is actually currently restarting. Why is Atlantis restarting right now? We have Atlantis set up with a reloader annotation. Thank you, appreciate that. So we have a reloader annotation. If we look at our GitOps repo Atlantis, application, there's an annotation here that specifies that there's an Atlantis secret that anytime Atlantis secrets updates, we want this application to conduct a rolling restart. So by executing, just by having that annotation on the resource, as soon as Vault pulled that secret, or as soon as external secrets operator pulled that secret in from Vault, it automatically does a rolling restart on Atlantis, and Atlantis gets refreshed with that new secret in its context for executions. So that's how Reloader works on the platform. Good to know about, really cool tool. It's a one-trick pony. It doesn't do too much else, but we love Reloader at Kubefirst. Let's see, I guess the next thing that we should talk through is
Automated Terraform. You kind of touched on it earlier, but were you going to show a live Atlantis pull request?
Yeah, let's get rid of that mystery. So let's go back to our GitOps repository. And if you go to Terraform and then GitHub, there's a file in here called repos.tf. And repos.tf defines the two repositories that we created for you when we did a Kubefirst install. But what if you wanted more than just those two repositories? Let's see what that looks like. So right here in the browser, I'm going to do this on screen. And I'm going to copy metaphor and paste it. And then the two spots where it says metaphor, I'm going to change it to PlatformCon. Let's do that. So PlatformCon there, and I'm going to copy that down there. This is implementing a GitHub module repository that we give you with the platform also, and you're free to extend. And this defines the rules of what happens when you create a Git repository. We're going to set this up to go ahead and archive when we destroy. So I'll say true there. And the other value, I'm going to change to true as well for auto init. Setting this to true is going to create a README file and establish that initial commit for the new repository. You could set that to false if you were going to import one that you already have. And then you basically hit commit. And this is the important detail here. Don't commit directly to main. For any Terraform changes on the platform, it's always good to have a branch. So I'll just call this my branch. The reason we want you to have a branch, let me give it a good message too. I'll say, or adding a new repo to my GitHub space. And when I propose that change, this is where ngrok comes into play. For any of you who skipped over the ngrok part of the setup, you won't be able to execute this part. You can still submit the pull request, obviously, but there's some magic that's going to happen when that executes. And we don't have that magic running. What happened? Hang on just a second.
Atlantis did come running again after the restart, right?
It's a good question. Atlantis is healthy and running. Let me look
logs, did it?
at.
It's either that or the webhook URL didn't update.
So it looks like it started and nothing has hit it yet. So I think my ngrok is suspect for some reason. I don't know if I exported it incorrectly. Scroll back up.
You should, if you, in your Argo CD UI, I think you can go to the scroll a little bit. I'm trying to say words and they're not coming out, but if you go back one to your Atlantis components, there's the Atlantis ngrok app, and we can just see if maybe its logs have something.
We have some events.
Logs?
Nothing in logs. I'm going to... Should I heavy hammer and just kill it and see if it comes back clean?
Sure, why not?
It's worth a shot. That's the beauty of GitOps too, for anyone unfamiliar with GitOps. If all of your sources in Git, you get to delete whatever you want, whenever you want, and it usually comes back stronger than ever. Atlantis ngrok. So now she's gone. And in a second, it should be coming back. Atlantis ngrok. And let's see if we get any extra juice out of that. I would love to show the IAC on screen if I can. That was enough. I'm not sure what the story is there. I guess anybody following along at home, if you have trouble getting a plan to kick off, I deleted the ngrok components. GitOps automatically recreated it, and that was enough to successfully register the webhook the way that we needed it to, so that we can run plans. So a little bit of a bump in the road in the demo. Apologies for that. But here you can see the result that we were after. Sorry, say that again, Jared.
That wouldn't be a live demo without it.
It wouldn't be a live demo without it, you're right. So this is the really nice thing that we love about Atlantis, is that when you put a pull request forward for a change to your infrastructure as code, Atlantis will run the plan for you. That basically means that developers can submit a pull request to your platform, and they don't need access to the cloud or to your repos or whatever. You can establish a platform that has the right access and give your developers access to submit pull requests. And then there's an engine that's doing the plans and the applies on that developer's behalf in a way that's transparent to everybody in your organization. So if you're running Terraform as a command line tool on your local host, I look at a lot of companies, and you're not alone, but we don't have to be working that way anymore. So we love Atlantis. It is a part of the platform if it's helpful to you. When you see the plan that you like, you can type Atlantis apply as a user with access to the repo. And then instead of me conducting a Terraform apply, it's an engine with a good audit trail conducting the apply. If the apply is successful, as you can see here, it's automatically going to merge and close the pull request. And as a result, if I go back over to my GitOps repositories, I should now have first MOBot. I have 3 repositories instead of 2 now, and one of them is this new one called PlatformCon. PlatformCon has been created with an initial commit. It has a README, and it's now managed in infrastructure as code. And what that means is, as a platform member, anytime I add a user to my platform, they're automatically incorporated with the correct access to all the repositories that are a part of the platform. And you just have this really nice IAC-driven experience of managing who has access to what in a way where everything is part of the GitOps repository and auditable from what has changed and who has access to what standpoint. And if you guys are ever, in your Slack workspaces and hear the question, does anyone have access to such and such repo? The reason is because it's not transparent to anybody. And we've had our GitHub repos in infrastructure as code for about 5 years now. And it has just been incredibly valuable to be able to always lean on the fact that everybody always has access. Everybody can see what they don't have access to, so that they don't have to ask, what repos exist or anything like that. And if they see a repository that they feel like they should get access to, they can pull request their own access and get approval by whoever it is that you deem to be the appropriate person to approve that access. So it's just a better workflow for managing Git repositories, in our opinion. And it is part of the platform if it helps you at all. And then I think that beats up IAC.
I think we lost John.
I think we did. Okay, I thought maybe that was me because my internet's gone out twice already. So let's see here. What are we going to do next? We will see if I can. We're going to give John just 2 minutes. Otherwise, I'll pull up my platform. And
did I make it? It was only 1 minute.
Yeah, you made it. I didn't even have to share my screen yet.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry about that, Jared. I'm not sure what happened. I just lost all internet. I was just asking where we're headed next, and I'm going to share my screen one more time.
Yep. Metaphor, and then how we add CI to application repos.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so let's look at Metaphor for a quick sec. That's the other repository that we create with the platform. It's available at this link down here. And just a quick overview of the content of this repository. A lot of it is just React stuff for a sample app and noise to you if you don't care to recreate a React app. There's 4 details that are very important to you, though. There's this .argo folder. The .argo folder will show all of the mechanics of how we do deployments, of how we publish containers, how we publish Helm charts, and how we release software. And then we have the .github folder, Or if you were doing a GitLab variation, this would be a .gitlab.ci.yaml file in the root of the repository. In either case, we'll have some automation set up so that basically all we need to do is have GitHub Actions invoke Argo Workflows, and those Argo Workflows are right here. So every time we commit to the main branch, the way it's set up by default, this thing's going to kick off publish job. The publish job is just going to call Argo submit of .argo publish. So it calls this guy right here. And then what this publish job does, if we look at the steps here, it has different names like publish container, checkout. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and kick off a job real quick so that that's running while I'm talking through these details. Let me go back to the repo root, and I'm just going to go to the README and edit it on the main branch so that anything changes on the main branch. If anything changes on the main branch, then a job's going to kick off. And you can see that once the main branch is touched, if you hit actions up here, you'll see a pipeline kick off, and you'll start to see some jobs get conducted. So anyway, and all of you should feel free to make that edit in your README. Just any old change to the main branch will do, and then stuff will start publishing, and you'll get a new version shipping to development, staging, production shortly. So back in the Metaphor repo itself, we covered the .github folder, and the .argo folder has the automations. Let's look at those automations super quick. We're going to start with publish. This is the first job of the pipeline. And if you look at the steps here, it's just at a macro level, we're not doing very much. We have to build and push the container. Then we have to check out a Git repository. We have to get the chart version, set the chart version, and then publish the Helm chart. That's the publish operation. Now, that probably felt a little bit of hand waving, and that's because there's no actual automation in the scripts in your repository. Instead, the automation that we provide on the platform is in some CWFTs. That's an Argo workflow terminology that stands for cluster workflow template. And basically, we deliver the platform with some Argo workflow automations that allow you to do some simple GitOps tasks really easily, like publish a container, push a container somewhere, publish a chart, push the chart somewhere, and then set a desired state in a GitOps repository. That's like basically the whole flow of doing everything in GitOps. So when this job executes, let me go back up to the action. If we look at this publish job, you'll see that when it's executing, it feels like it's GitHub Actions executing. You get that nice rich developer feedback into GitHub. But this work that's being conducted right here is not truly being conducted by GitHub Actions at all. Instead, it's just an invocation of some Argo workflows. We can take a look at those Argo workflows right over here. So if you click this link or go to argo.kubefirst.dev and hit X on all their advertisements and continue, then you'll see that there's a job that's executing for publish right now. And there's also some previous executions from the last pipeline that ran. And right here, you can see there's publish container and checkout and get chart version. These are individual CWFT containers that execute these tiny little jobs. And they have tiny little logs that output about the chart version that it found or whatever it is for that tiny little task. Excuse me. You can find those automations in your GitOps repository. If you're looking for it, it's in the GitOps repository. So if we go to registry and then your management cluster and then components, Argo Workflows has a CWFTs folder in it. And this is where our automations live for how all that stuff works that we're calling from the Argo pipeline. So here, for example, if we look at CWFT Canico, which is how we're doing the build push operation, this is the actual work that is happening. So if you wanted to make changes to the way publishes work, if you wanted to make changes, or maybe you wanted to keep all these automations identical to the way that they are, but you wanted to add some additional steps like marking in Datadog that a deployment happened, or sending yourself a Slack notification, or whatever it might be that you want to add to your automations, you can simply extend these CWFTs that we deliver to you by changing them here, and then they're registered with the system, and then you can test it out by just deploying Metaphor, and if it works, then it's going to work for everything. So back to Metaphor repo. We have about 2 of the 4 important details. There's the .argo folder that has your pipelines. There's the .github and or .gitlab CI YAML. That's what calls your Argo workflows. Then there's 2 other details. There's a Docker file. This has to build your app, and we can't tell you how to build your app. This is how we build our app. It's a really good example to start from, but it does not build your app. It builds our app. So you are going to need a couple adjustments in here so that it builds your app instead of ours. And then the last piece that you need is the charts directory. Now, our charts directory is basically just like a default chart with just a couple other adjustments to it so that we are pulling secrets into Metaphor, and so that we're pulling config maps into Metaphor, and so that we, I think that's probably the 2 details that we adjusted. But if you do just like a default chart, that'll be really, really close to what we need to be in this charts directory. Just make sure that your application here matches your repository name. Keep it simple, keep it UTF ready. Lowercase letters and hyphens are great. Capital letters and underscores are generally terrible. So let's see. That's Metaphor. We're doing delivery right now. We showed it in Argo. We have this thing executing still. We have a release going out the door now. You can see in GitHub Actions, you get this nice color changing technique. Every time in Argo Workflows, that you shift from container to container to container in GitHub, and we didn't like do this or anything. This is just really great cloud native stuff working great together. It's going to change colors automatically, so you can kind of feel when you're going from container to container in Argo Workflows in the GitHub experience. And that same experience is available in GitLab as well. So that's going to ship this thing. And right now, if I go to Metaphor production, am I too late? Metaphor production is currently, no, I'm not too late. So we're currently on version 0.0.1, and we have a pipeline delivering an 0.1.0 version to production, and then version bumping Metaphor so that the next release will be 0.2.0. So if I go back to Argo CD,
Try your other tab that's open. You might still be signed in.
it's too late. It's too late. I keep losing my mouse cursor and it is driving me crazy.
Metaphor.
Metaphor production. If I hit refresh on here, and I don't have to hit refresh, that's just expediting a 3-minute poll. Argo CD will keep tabs on everything that's registered every few minutes and applies things automatically the way we have things set up. If you ever want to expedite that, you can just go and hit the refresh button and it'll check in that moment. So there you can see that we just got a new version a few seconds ago. New version got deployed. And on Metaphor production, if I hit refresh here, this value is going to change from 0.0.1 to 0.1.0, and it's 0.1.0 now. So our new version has shipped to production, and Metaphor is now set up for the 0.2.0 release. So every update that you make to Metaphor here is going to make a new release candidate chart, and then we have that automatically shipping to production. But you can put a gate right there so that there was manual inspection or a test or whatever you need in your CI. But it's a pretty good CI ecosystem to lean on. We have self-hosted GitLab runners or GitHub runners, and they're pre-integrated with Argo Workflows. So if any of those three are valuable to you, the Kubefirst platform local K3D ecosystem should be a pretty good starting point for any demos or repeatable things that you might have. Let's see. Jared, what are we doing next? We got through Metaphor. Is that most of the show?
That is the most of the show. The only thing we were going to do is touch on some of the stuff that you get if it's in a cloud through the GitOps Magic space, if that's available. Otherwise, yeah, that was time. I think that's it.
Yeah. Before I jump into the cloud, I should probably pause for a second, just engage the room. Is there anybody that has been following along that has any questions about the way things have flowed, or curiosities about how to add your stuff, or anything like that, use cases, etc.? All right, we will move right along into the cloud space. I think I have a cloud stack up and running at...
I have a question.
Yes, what do you got?
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed so far. So the question is that what container image registry did you use or you deploy in your platform, and where did you push your container actually?
That's a really good question. So by default, in all of our clouds, including the K3D stack, it's going to publish images to your Git provider. So if you chose GitHub like we did in this workshop, it'll be right in... Jared, can you help me navigate to that on screen? That's right in Kubefirst demo bot itself under packages. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and then you'll have a Metaphor right here. And as it publishes images like 9 minutes ago there, that's where it shows up. We have a question: in a month or two, I will have to put together a reference architecture about this type of platform. Will I be able to recreate the lab to help vet and document the solution? Yeah, absolutely. And for that matter, if you already know what cloud it is that you're going to be building the ecosystem in, we also support, I think, 7 clouds, 6 or 7 clouds right now. So there might be a cloud implementation that's more similar to your permanent infrastructure that you're after. But yeah, for a lab environment, this would be reproducible. We keep the K3D ecosystem as part of our core functionality for every release. So if you ever have trouble with it, we have a Slack community. It's Slack, kubefirst.io/Slack. And any problem that anybody ever has with installing Kubefirst or a local environment or anything like that, we have a helping hands channel. You can just GitHub issues, any time of day or night, just hop in there, and we got a bunch of engineers that'll hop in and help you along with any issues that you have. We have a question: how do you send kubefirst.dev to localhost? That is a great question. That was a trick that we stole. I can't remember who we stole that from. There was some blog that showed basically how that works. But the TLDR for our implementation is we have a hosted zone in AWS. It doesn't have to be in AWS. It could be any hosted zone or hosted site. And if you set it up so that your domain registrar points to, in our case, kubefirst.dev at this hosted zone. And then in that hosted zone, if you set it up, yeah, like nip.i, exactly. So if you set that up so that star dot whatever domain, so we set it up so that star.kubefirst.dev resolved to the value 127.0.0.1, which is just the callback IP address. Then that means that anytime you try to hit Argo CD.kubefirst.dev, it's going to go hit Route 53. That's going to resolve to your local host. So it's going to try to hit it on whatever host you're making that request from, which happens to have a Kubernetes cluster listening on it. And then because of the way we're implementing MK-cert, so that you have good host name certificates in those namespaces in your local environment, you actually get a good browser trusted experience. So you can get right to that. It looks as if it's like a cloud ingress instance, although there's really no routing about it. It's just hitting your local host at 127.0.0.1. Great question, though. That was the neatest trick I'd ever seen when we stumbled upon that. Maybe 2 years ago.
Can you say again how you handle certificate, the valid certificate again?
Yeah, sure. So the certificates, we have so it works differently on cloud environments than the local environment. In cloud environments, we use Cert Manager, external DNS, Ingress Nginx, and Let's Encrypt as the certificate technology suite, if you will. And anytime an ingress is created in the cluster, Ingress Nginx will wake up, say, hey, I need to make sure I have a load balancer. Once it has a load balancer, external DNS is going to say, hey, I'm going to need an A record that points to that load balancer for this host name. And then Cert Manager is going to wake up and say, hey, I need to make sure that there's a certificate for that host name in this namespace so that anybody that traffics through the ingress and hits this service has a certificate that they can hit that's browser trusted. So that's how it works in the cloud. We have a really great video on it called the trifecta. If you just Google YouTube Kubefirst trifecta, we'll talk you through that whole experience in the cloud. For the local experience, it's a good bit different because you don't have that true natural ingress capability the same way that you do in the cloud. So Let's Encrypt, which is a SaaS service, doesn't have a good way to reach into your cluster. So in order to sidestep that, what we did was we created these Kubefirst commands. And I think I can show this on screen. This is a little dicey because I'm going off script and it might not work. But I think even if it doesn't work, I'm going to be able to demonstrate the answer that I want to be able to say. So if I go to the GitOps catalog, these all regularly work on the cloud versions. I'm a little nervous about some of them on the K3D version just because they have ingresses and opinions and stuff. But if I pick Flappy K-Ray, which is just a video game that we created, this Flappy K-Ray is going to install, and it's going to install with an ingress as well to my local environment. So let me go back over to installed apps and go to GitOps itself. And we have Flappy K-Ray now. And that means that in Argo CD, if I go to the registry and refresh it, it's already syncing, and that means we have Flappy K-Ray coming in. And So this is creating an ingress, and this is the way the cloud is set up, where it's actually doing a certificate request and hoping that Let's Encrypt is going to take care of that certificate for us, which it's not going to do because this is the local environment. But what we can do is type Kubefirst K3D. I can't remember the command. Kubefirst K3D MK cert. Application is the K-ray, and namespace. I'm gonna have to look that up. Excuse me. The namespace that we have picked for this is
Floppy K-ray.
Floppy K-ray. Excuse me. So that command right there, what that did, if I coupons to floppy K-ray, get secrets. That 20 seconds ago just created this floppy K-ray TLS secret, and that secret should be enough, I think, to be able to hit floppy K-ray, although I suspect that it's set up for Ingress Nginx and not traffic, but let me give it a shot anyway, just because lab demos are fun. Floppy K-ray .kubefirst .dev. And it is complaining, which I don't like. It usually, yeah, there's something wrong about that. So that was a bad demo, but that is what I wanted to get on screen, was that particular command. Any application that you want to have an ingress that you want to be able to show well with that nice rich cert, this is messed up because floppy K-ray is set up for Ingress Nginx and not traffic. But if you were to execute this command, it would put the TLS secret that you need in that namespace, and then you could just have an ingress at whatever.kubefirst.dev, and it would be browser trusted and show well in your browser experience. Let's see, any other questions or details? Right on. So if we don't have any other questions at this point, I guess I could put cluster management on screen for a quick second so people can see the cloud experience. Let me go to Argo or Kubefirst. GitOpsMagic.com. I think I have one there. Ew, and am I going to get lucky? Okay, so when you do a cloud install, Kubefirst Pro is going to look a little bit different than it does in your local experience. You'll have not just applications, but also environments and cluster management. In cluster management, we have this implementation where you can create new virtual or physical clusters. When you pick physical, this is just creating a good old-fashioned Kubernetes cluster in whatever cloud it is that you install to. So in this case, this is a SIBO cluster, and a physical one that we create would be created in SIBO directly. Or you could choose virtual, and it'll create that cluster using the vCluster technology made by Luff Labs. And it'll put that virtual cluster inside your management cluster. So if all you want is isolation and you don't want all the overhead of a whole bunch of different clusters, but you do want the isolation of a whole bunch of different clusters, virtual clusters is a really nice implementation for that. If you're not doing something like that and you just want normal, good old-fashioned dev stage prod, Physical clusters is probably what you're after. That's just going to put a cluster directly in your cloud. You can bind it to an environment that you have or not, up to you. And you have to give it a cluster name. We'll do PlatformCon2024. And you have to pick a region and a size and a number of nodes, and you hit create. And what this does, this is going to demonstrate a little bit of our fleet management implementation that we have in the cloud ecosystem. So back here, if I go to applications real quick and dive into this instance's GitOps repository, what we will see is in the registry, or sorry, in templates, we have workload cluster and workload v cluster, which came from our upstream GitOps template repository. And this defines the rules of how clusters get created. So whenever we create a new cluster from our management cluster, we'll have a recipe about what apps go in that workload cluster. So you'll notice in this list, this doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff about GitHub or GitLab or Atlantis or any of the sort of management control plane tools, HashiCorp Vault, etc. None of that stuff is in here because we already have that management control plane. For all the downstream clusters that we create from that management cluster, like development, development green, development blue, staging, production, whatever, we want those to be created in a consistent way, but it doesn't need all the same tools as our management ecosystem. So you get to define what those rules are right here in the templates. And then when you create a Kubernetes cluster using Kubefirst, it's not just going to create an empty Kubernetes cluster. It's actually going to create like a fully functioning cluster that has all of the GitOps apps that you want in your clusters. And you get to define those rules however you want. So if you want Datadog agent in every single cluster that you create, you just get to drop that application right in that directory, and it's going to show up there. Right now, when I look at this PlatformCon instance and look at it in Argo CD, and here I can use single sign-on to sign in. Here we can see right now it's doing some infrastructure provisioning. And if I were to hop into Civo Cloud, we would see a new Kubernetes cluster in management. Spinning right up. Here we go. PlatformCon2024. 2 nodes, just like we asked. And this only exists because we click that button in here. But it's not just an empty cluster in Argo CD. Now that that exists, you can see that it's going through a series of Argo CD sync waves to install all of the components that we decided in our template we want in all of our workload clusters. So it starts out with your usual suspects of Ingress Nginx, Cert Manager, Reloader, external DNS, external secrets operator, and it's an external secrets operator that's pre-configured to be integrated with your management vault so that it has the correct access to be able to pull secrets out of Vault and make them available as Kubernetes secrets and all that kind of stuff. Really neat implementation. And as you can see, we've got our new cluster up and ready to go. And now this ecosystem has 4 clusters instead of 3. And if you wanted to get rid of that cluster, you'll never guess. It's the exact same experience. You just delete the cluster. And when you delete the cluster, it's going to do the same GitOps shenanigans, just in the exact opposite order. It's going to tear down all of the applications in the opposite sync wave order of the direction that it was provisioned. And then once all those applications have been torn down, the infrastructure in the cloud will get torn down, and it's like it never existed. So it's pretty cool fleet management feature that we've been messing around with in the Kubefirst Pro UI. And we're very anxious to get feedback on it too. So if any of our workshop viewers here end up using it and have feedback for us, we would love to know how close we're hitting the mark in terms of what you're after. And that's really the cloud experience, I think, that I was trying to show. In the cloud, we still have the same old GitOps catalog, the same way we did on K3D. We have some environments. This allows you to sort of manage when you have a whole bunch of different clusters, which isn't really appropriate for when you're on your local host because they're a little bit resource intensive. But when you're in a cloud and you have a whole bunch of different clusters, a lot of times you'll have shenanigans where you're like, you have a development cluster and you need to create a new development cluster that's like a new version of Kubernetes maybe, and you want to be able to move that entire environment off of the old cluster onto the new cluster. That's what we're doing with environments, is being able to allow you to manage late binding of environments onto cluster infrastructure and a bunch of other cool stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show there. And I don't know, we're at T-minus 14 minutes to the end of the meeting, Jared.
Good.
I think we're opening it back up to the classroom here. If anybody has any last questions that you guys want to try and squeeze in, we're happy to field anything at all too. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the workshop. It can be about Kubernetes itself, about GitOps, infrastructure as code, what we think of this technology or that technology, anything at all.
I posted two comments in the chat. One is for how I handle the CA. I generated CA with OpenSSL command and trusted with the browser and put it in the secret, and then that's it.
Right on. Yeah. And that's truly very similar to what this command does on your behalf. We're leaning on a utility called mkcert to generate that key, but very similar in practice to what you're doing there.
Yeah. And about,
sorry, go ahead.
And what for the container image registry, do you see any value that in local environments we deploy like a registry like Arbor?
So from our perspective, we don't want to install that registry locally, something like Harbor anyways. Harbor has pretty heavy resource utilization, and a lot of people's laptops don't have enough to support that on top of all the other stuff we're installing. However, K3D does come with a default Docker registry. It's just Docker-registry, I think, is like the Helm chart and the container image name. And you actually can host a registry in that K3D cluster natively through the K3D CLI. So if you're trying to just have something in there in that K3D environment, I believe we actually install it on an older version. I can't remember if we do today, but really easy to adjust the K3D command to have a registry and cluster that's a lot lighter weight than something like Harbor. And I do not know if it has the same capabilities with Helm charts and containers and other stuff that Harbor can do. But as far as container images, that's an easy, lightweight way to get going. But we do have Chart Museum in K3D, so you don't technically need the Helm chart storage out of Harbor.
It's about the security scan. Do you have any plan or use any 3V, Falco, Sneak, anything?
Trivy is the one that we've had up and operational most in our ecosystem. We can add that to the GitOps catalog, and we've had a way to integrate that with the Metaphor application. And what that would do is have a Trivy scan after the container build. I think in our workflow that we had the implementation for and could probably dig up is we would actually publish the container and deliver it to development, and then we would scan the container image after that, and then report back on whatever those failures were to leave it up to you to decide what level of error you want to fail that pipeline on or stop that deployment from going forward.
And the last one, and also you said about the OIDC. So you said Vault is not good enough and you are going to remove it?
Not that it's not good enough. We just want to have less and less reliance on Vault with the license change and the unknown of the community and what they're going to want to switch to. We truly switched to Vault as an SSO provider out of convenience for having to maintain less stuff with a small team. We would probably choose the next time around, we would choose something like Keycloak or FusionAuth or Authentic, I think is the other one we've done some looking into, but something that's just a lightweight and purely IDP, not, that's a terrible word to use at PlatformCon, identity provider that removes the coupling into another system. But we do not have a choice yet or something picked.
Great. Thank you so much.
And your last question there was that about the recording. Yes, the recording will be available. I don't know when we'll make that recording available, but or where. I guess we can distribute it in the Slack channel and the platform engineering workspace, as well as we can link it at the top of the public Notion doc that we've shared with everyone.
Yeah.
And we'll send it out in email format, I guess, also.
Yeah, we'll also be making sure that the platform engineering PlatformCon conference gets a copy of it so that it's in their YouTube ecosystem, however they publish their content, but we'll host it as well.
Did you use the Terraform for like bootstrapping a repository and an application instead of Backstage? I mean, I think an alternative way is to use Backstage for that, right?
Yeah, you could. We have long used Terraform for managing everything about Git and users. Just internally, that's been a practice that we've just kind of hung on to for many years now, and it's worked real well for us. In our own instance of Kubefirst, like we run Kubefirst on Kubefirst for our day jobs also, and like our own internal stack of Kubefirst, we have extended considerably the user module, the Git repository module, so that it's capable of basically any user that we onboard as an engineer to Kubefirst. We just submit a simple pull request saying they're a member of the developer group or the admin group or whatever group it is. And then they're automatically granted access to all of our Git repositories, all of our OIDC clients, all of our platform tools, like everything, everywhere. They're just part of from a single pull request with a plan that shows every place that the person's going to go. And we really like that experience, both for onboarding and for offboarding. With Backstage, there is some overlap with what we're trying to do with Kubefirst and what Backstage is trying to do. We even looked at Backstage as an implementation for the portal portion of the platform, and we found Backstage to be a little bit heavy in terms of demand on the engineering team that needs to run Kubefirst. In a way that I'll keep my comments to myself on recording, but I have so far not decided to include Backstage on the Kubefirst platform by default, at least. The question could be asked: how bad you need a portal for app delivery when you have a GitOps ecosystem and everything managed? Because I mean, for us internally, as an example, we have 8 clouds. We have to build our internal platform that has development and staging and production. We have to manage all of that. We have to build the applications that we have to build to produce Kubefirst and everything that goes with that. And we're able to very easily manage 100% of everything as code, as either GitOps or IAC, with no issue. And we don't have a portal. we also only have 7 engineers. So 8 clouds, many products, many tools, our own prod, our own management, etc. Just 7 engineers, and we're doing just fine without a portal. And when you look at the complexity of what a portal introduces, you better be big enough that it's worth it, because there's some it just adds a whole nother layer to what you're trying to do. So I don't want to advise you to stay away from portals or to use portals, but be mindful about what you're trying to get out of the portal before diving into it. And some of the portals are easier than others. It's my best stab at it.
Perfect. So you use also Kubefirst for Kubefirst internally, and yeah.
I mean, if you needed to.
What is the pricing? What is the business model?
We have a very free business model. Somehow we keep getting visionaries to buy our project and hire our employees, and we get to keep going. We do have a pro tier. The user interface that you've been looking at in the cloud, that user interface is eventually going to be subject to commercial paywalls. But today we don't take a single dollar for anything anywhere. And we think within the next quarter, we're going to be turning on our first paywall features with cluster management in the cloud versions of Kubefirst Pro. And then we also have some other products that we're yet to announce that will introduce a commercial stream for us.
Amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a passion project for multiple years. My co-founder Jared and I, who's on the call, we did this nights and weekends on our own to try and get it operational in a very stealth way. And then we did an enterprise pilot while still stealth for a year with an enterprise company called Virtru. They do encryption for G Suite and Gmail and a bunch of other Salesforce, a bunch of other integrations. Really high compliance environment. So we know that the platform can be extended into FedRAMP, can be extended into clouds that we don't even support. They had to go multi-cloud into a cloud that we didn't even support, and it was able to extend into clouds that aren't even a part of our vision. And once we got through that pilot, we decided to open source, join the CNCF landscape, and then we tried raising capital, and we got acquired while raising capital by KubeShop. And then just a couple months ago, we got reacquired by the Civo cloud. So we're now operationally distinct from Civo. We get to keep our cloud agnostic DNA about the project, but we now have sort of the capability to have the size team that we've always dreamt of as of a couple months ago. So we're ready to really take the hill here.
My last question, I promise. What did you use Crossplane for?
Crossplane. So in the example that we showed in K3D, there was no Crossplane. At the very tail end of the workshop today, I showed cluster management in the cloud variation of Kubefirst, and that does leverage Crossplane. Now, it's not implementing Crossplane as native Crossplane objects. It's using the Terraform provider. So we're truly using Terraform and wrapping it in Crossplane so that we can GitOps our Terraform for cluster management. But it's Terraform that's being executed for the creation of those clusters. So a little bit of a complicated answer, but that's the answer we got.
Great. Thank you so much.
Of course. And everyone, that is 1 hour, 59 minutes. 25 seconds. I think we did a great job today. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for attending our workshop. I hope This has been at least eye-opening about a nice way to have a repeatable environment. Like I said before, kubefirst.io/Slack is how you will be able to find us forevermore. The workshop that we provided today is something that we permanently make available to all of our users. So thanks for joining, and yeah, we'll see you in the Kubefirst Slack community. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.